Be the Talk, episode 142, featuring Doreen Lorenzo. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Doreen Lorenzo. Doreen, are you ready to talk?
I am so ready to talk, Nathan. Let's bring it on.
Doreen Lorenzo is a successful leader of global creative firms who advise Fortune 100 companies on design and innovation issues for decades. She is the assistant dean of the School of Design and Creative Technology at the University of Texas at Austin. She is a columnist for Fast Company, Co-Design, and Medium. Doreen speaks publicly about leadership and the power of empathy to drive business results. Doreen Lorenzo, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, your talk at UT Austin, TEDx UT Austin, is called Design Thinking. We have so many common points in common. We talk about empathy. We're designers. We love systems and design thinking. And I just love that you brought up the F word in your talk. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, in design, there's been this movement, right? Or design, let's even take it to one step further in this innovation practice, that we all have to accept failure.
That's the F word.
That's the F word. But for me, I never use the F word. I actually have a really hard time with the F word because I think we're confused and we're confusing people. We are brought up, particularly K through 12, with the concept that you need to do well in school, and failing actually is not an option. There's very few students who come home as sophomores in high school and say, "Mom, Dad, guess what? I failed my math test. Aren't you excited?" And then what happens is they get older, they get into college, or they get into the workplace, and we tell them that failure is okay. So I think the nomenclature is wrong. I think the sentiment is right, but I think the nomenclature is wrong. How I look at this is we need to teach people how to be continuous learners. We need to teach people how to pick up and learn from things that they're doing, learn what works and what doesn't work for them. And to me, that's what the aspect that we're missing. And I think what I've seen in higher education is as we do that, it resonates much more with people because that F word kind of has a bad connotation. It's hard to have people just switch that off.
Well, absolutely. And already, Doreen, I mean, this is supposed to be a conversation. We thought about design, but I think it's really becoming a conversation about culture because everybody has understood, what you're talking about. And so very few companies will you go in and they'll say, failure is evil because they know that it's not cool to say that anymore. But which companies and which cultures really walk the walk instead of just talking the talk? What are you doing to reinforce a design culture and a learning culture and prepare your students and your graduates to be able to find a culture that's going to be healthy for their learning and their career development?
Well, what you want to teach your students is how to pivot and how to learn, right? Things are not black and white. Things aren't binary in the world. And there's no absolute. And sometimes the answer or the solution is what works at that moment in time. And you have to teach students about that. If you think about education today, particularly, primary and high school education, it's A/B, it's multiple choice, everything's very binary. Yet you get into the work world, and the work world is not a binary world. The work world is really, even today, much more driven by the sentiments and the emotions of the end users, who then drive change within organizations, right? Because you have to now pay attention to what your customers are doing. I know that sounds like that they should have been doing this for years and years, but we all know that wasn't true. But now customers have such a strong voice, you have to pay attention. So you get into this world where you have to have continuous development, continuous interaction with your customers, And we need to be adapting that to our students and to teach them that, hey, there may not be an answer, and things that you thought were right today may not be right next year. And you have to learn how to understand that, pivot, and keep moving forward.
What can you describe, Doreen, just the mindset of some of the beginning students in your program? Are they coming to you with kind of as the best and the brightest, and with a learning mindset and a end user driven mindset, or is that something that you're needing to kind of onboard and retrain your users in the program on?
Well, I think this is the best and the brightest. These are incredibly smart students. They've done well, through their academics, which is how they end up at the University of Texas. And so they're very smart students, but they've always had to have an answer. Their careers, and because that's what education is binary. You get an A, you get a B, you get a letter, you get a number grade. And so what we're teaching them, so they're eager to learn, but we're also teaching them beyond what they've learned. We're teaching them how to learn a little differently. We're reprogramming their learning, because sometimes there isn't an answer. And sometimes you have to learn how to get inputs from many different people to get the answer. And so that's the kind of things that we're teaching them as they come in. And it's wonderful to watch the evolution of a student as they go through this process, because they come in and it's uncomfortable and it's not what they thought, and to watch them develop, and with that develop the self-confidence to be able to talk to different types of people that are not of their tribe, so to speak, and to be able to then come up with solutions they never thought they would have thought of is really inspiring.
So it really sounds like you're teaching the students who are, they have to have 700s, let's say, on the SATs, on their math, and all of these really, really high bar things. I would imagine you're describing that world of achievement and fixed knowledge, where it's compete against one another to get into the best and brightest schools. Once they're here, you have to teach that ambiguity. You have to teach the people skills a little bit in terms of the customer validation and all of that stuff. And it sounds like you're really seeing amazing results as you teach them that openness to change, ambiguity, and trial and error. Is that a fair way to say it, or would you say it a totally different way, Doreen?
No, Nathan, I loved what you said, because that's in fact what we're doing. We're teaching them, when you get out of school, if you are an engineering major, chances are, as you go down in your professional career, you're not just going to work with engineers. So part of what we're teaching you is really the value that, what does a marketing person bring? What does a design person bring to the table? What does a CS person bring to the table? You want to bring those different types of people together to begin to work, because that's what the world is like. And that's how you can really perfect using your talent and your skills. So you are going to be very good in your craft. We know that, but we also want to give you those dimensional skills that are going to make you be more successful in whatever career you choose.
I noticed that in my own work, and I used to actually teach instructional design as an adjunct at the graduate level, and it's interesting when you look at students and when you look at your field, and there can be like those different domains that are totally separate from each other, and to give the students the best chance of being in the best possible position as a graduate and in their career. Sometimes it can be really challenging to teach the technical skills as well as the client-facing skills, as well as the project management skills, some of those different areas. How do you do that? Because I know that we're talking about design thinking, we're talking about engineering to a degree, but we're also talking about customer validation and being able to, almost like the old show Columbo, really finding out what's really going on and what customers really are trying to say, as opposed to the politically correct things that sometimes they say. So, what would you say to that?
one of the most important things we do is, well, we bring different types of students together to work on projects. So it's somewhat curated, where we don't want everybody who is in the same discipline or the same school to be on a project together, and we give them some real world problems to solve, and we make sure that they learn how to go do insights. They learn how to listen to people. They learn how to observe. They learn how to ask the right kind of questions, and they don't just take their knowledge of what they want to do or what they think is right. Now, they might go in with a supposition like, I think this is what it is. And it's really interesting to see how that does change or pivot based on the information they get from talking to people. And they do both quantitative and qualitative study with people, but we want them to really get comfortable with going out and talking to people. This is design is human-centered. This is human-centered design. So we want to make sure that we're getting the human part in.
Which is more challenging? I'm asking you for a broad brush, either or here, Doreen, which you may hate, but let's say you've got student A who is really highly engineering, binary, math, science focused. Is it easier or harder to get that person to do the client-facing stuff, or person B who's very gregarious? They have the aptitudes for the technical parts, but to get them to hone more on the detail, which is easier, or is it up to the individual?
It's really an individual. Sometimes you have gregarious engineers, right? Mm-hmm. Engineers by their nature, though, and using that example, sure, they tend to be shyer, and so that's a skill they'll have to learn more of. But sometimes you pair them with the right kind of people too. You pair them with a gregarious designer or business person who will help them and bring back the results of what this looks like. That's why teams are so important, because everybody's not everything.
Well, that's where the diversity principle comes in instead of the groupthink principle, for sure.
Exactly.
We've been enjoying this conversation with Doreen Lorenzo of the University of Texas at Austin. Her TEDx talk was called Design Thinking, and we're going to be right back in just a moment with Doreen in the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Doreen Lorenzo in the Blitz Round. Are you ready, Doreen?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right. So this is where I'm going to ask you a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of your talk. Question number 1, were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, most people don't get on the stage, automatically.
I'm not sure if they asked me to speak and then I sent something in, or I sent something in. So.
It sounds like you might have been invited or nominated to apply. I call that.
I think yes, maybe that was the case. I think I was nominated to apply.
That's what I call it. There's a third category of being nominated to apply. No, I've done enough of these that sounds like the category. All right. Question number 2. Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
Improviser.
How did that serve you?
It served me well. I mean, I had to memorize chunks of it and themes and how it works, but I'm much better at improvising because I like to really look out into the audience. I'm much more empathetic and really kind of study an audience and really understand and rise and fall and change things just based on their reactions.
Doreen, did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
I was in the zone.
How'd you get there?
Too many years of doing this.
I love the zone. What was the most painful? This is the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
I can talk on and on and on about the program. Because it's unique and it's different. And I had to cut a lot of that out because it was just, there was too much. I got my point across.
What's a tip, a technique, or a tool that helped you prepare?
Don't sweat it. Don't sweat. Just what I like to do is, I will review, I will go through it, I will time it. I'll walk around the house. I always use that kind of memory game where I'll walk through my house and assign different topics to different pieces of furniture. And that's how I can keep the flow of any speech going.
I love that technique. I don't know that anybody specifically mentioned that yet on the talk. So congratulations. It's Doreen, it's a performance. So what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
I had no idea that I was going to close it because they kept the, I knew what time they had wanted me there, but I had no idea I was going to close it because they had kept the flow of the speaker's secret. So that was just really surprising. It's like, oh, okay, well, this better be good because it's the closing speech.
My word. That's a little different. So as a closer, I've already interviewed other closers in this stream of interviews. I was a closer. It's really an honor to be a closer. What's your advice for other closers?
Be inspiring, right? You want people to walk out. You want them to walk out feeling really good about the day they just spent and feeling really good about what they've heard, not just from your speech, but throughout the day and the contribution. And hopefully, everybody feeling that it was worth it and it was good and it was inspiring and I learned something from the whole day. And so I think what you want to make sure is, you're not the downer in the speech. So just leave it on an up note.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we've been talking to Doreen Lorenzo of the University of Texas at Austin, and in a moment, we're going to be right back with her for her final word of advice for UTalk Universe. Before we do that, I want to encourage you, go to our show notes page because you're going to have a clickable link that you can watch her TEDx talk. It's called Design Thinking. I wholeheartedly endorse all other, design related videos because it's so important to our world today. You can also go and link in. We'll have a link to her LinkedIn profile so you can actually connect with Doreen Lorenzo. And in a moment, we'll be right back with the final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with the final word of advice from Doreen Lorenzo.
Well, my final word of advice, it's kind of twofold. I mean, it's great to be able to have a point of view and go out and talk about it to people. And, but also your people's time is precious. And so make sure that what you're saying, is something that is of interest to people or something that will I feel like has an impact on people. I think that's incredibly important.
Doreen Lorenzo, thanks so much for taking time today to come on the talk with us and share your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.